Hi, I'm Jennifer and I am the owner of Porcelynne and the designer behind our patterns. So today we're actually going to be doing a sewing demo for the Rachel tank. So this is a pattern I released a couple years ago, actually, probably about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But I've made a few changes to it. So I've started working with a number of really great testers, and so we revisited the pattern to kind of make a couple little tweaks to help address other fit issues that may come up. In that process, a lot of people wanted more than just the asymmetrical design that was the original design of this, so I took the pattern in the middle and I modified it a little bit so we could actually have 3 different options for the sewing. So the one I'm going to show you today is actually the one I'm wearing. So this is View B, and I have tons of these. It's a really comfortable tank, and here in Florida, I need easy things to put on, and every other tank that I've ever purchased just doesn't fit me chest-wise. So this is the one that I made in the video. So you're going to watch this in a minute. But before we get started, we can talk a little bit about the sizing. So my sizing goes from extra small to 3X. And I've had some people say, okay, well, 3X, can you go higher? I can certainly go higher, but for me, I am probably about a size 20 and I wear the extra large. So my 3X does actually cover quite a range. I also I have 6 cup sizes, 6 different cup sizes. I have a flat cup option. I have an AB cup, a CD, EF, a GH actually, and an IJ. So we have 6 different cup options. In my own measurements, I actually fall into the EF of the extra large. So I do have 2 additional cup sizes past what I actually use. So it does accommodate a fair amount of body sizes. So when you're looking at the chart, you'll see that your measurements might fall within a couple different sizes. And this will allow you to really kind of customize the fit. So what you can do is you can check, okay, if you're in the range of the extra small and the small, think about the fabric that you're using. If you're using a fabric that is really stretchy, you can go down to the extra small. If you're using a fabric that is really firm, or it has a really good recovery, you might actually want to go up in size. And that way it fits comfortably. Once you actually figure out which size you're going to be in, then you want to look at your bust size and under bust and kind of figure out exactly what cup size you would want to be in. And you can always play around with shaving a little bit extra off, because it is a 2 cup size range that it does increase by. So you can always make the larger cup size, baste it together at the shoulders and side seams, try it on, and then always take it in on the side if you want it to be a little bit more snug on you. But this really does have to do with personal preference and fit. So there's a lot of flexibility. Now, if you are on a range that is like right in the middle, between small and medium, and you're like, okay, well, my measurements fit into both. They fit into everything. Do I go with the smaller one or the larger one? You can also double check the measurement of kind of the back, neck, and the shoulder. So if you want to you can always look at the paper, look at the pattern, and double check to see where you want this to end on you. Do you have a narrow set of shoulders? If your shoulders are fairly narrow set, then you probably want to go down the size. If you're a little bit wider, you can always go up the size, and then just do the cup size according to that size. But that is about all I needed to explain before we get started, but enjoy the video. So on the Rachel tank, there are 3 different view options. View A is the original design that I actually had planned for this piece. And while we were doing some testing over the summer, we decided to add some symmetrical designs, which really wasn't adding anything new. It was just altering and modifying the existing patterns for that center front. So the one I'm actually going to be doing today is View B. So there are different pattern pieces. So I'm going to show you all the pattern pieces, and they don't quite all fit. This is the back. The back is in a separate file than the fronts. And the fronts are all grouped by cup size. You can pick the letter size from there. This is your side front. This is used on all of the designs, and so is the back. These pieces are a little different. So this is the inset. So this can be used with either view A or view C. So you can cut one for view A. For view C, you want to cut two but mirror them. This here, this piece is used only for view C. So this is that center panel cut on the fold. This here can actually be used for either A or B. So for A, you're just going to use this entire piece. And if you're going to do B, you just fold it on this line and then you cut this piece on the fold. So I kind of have two pieces in one to kind of save a little bit on the paper. I wasn't really able to do the same with this because the neckline shape was not as consistent. Otherwise I would have made it so this would be mirrored, but this works better. So we are going to be doing the front with it on the fold. So this is view B. So the fabrics I have chosen for this, set that aside. I have chosen this lovely little print for the center front. And one of the reasons I like to do prints on the center front is because I have a tendency to spill things always right down the front of me. So if it's a solid color, you're going to see it. If it's a print, you're not. So I'm using my double brushed nylon spandex for these pieces. And this is really, really soft and luxurious. This is what they use. It's very similar to what they use at Lululemon, if you're familiar with that athletic company. It's just very soft. This is also a double brush. This one's a little bit stretchier than this piece, but I felt that they would work together and make for a nice top. So I figured that the pinks in this can be pulled out in here. So it's not exactly the same color, but it's close enough. So on the patterns, I just want to kind of show you a few things. On the patterns, we do have a waist notch on the front side piece and on the back side piece. Now I do have in the instructions the measurement chart from the shoulder down to the waist. So if you find that your upper torso is actually taller, you can cut it here and kind of extend it to make it a little bit longer. You can also modify the width right about here. Now do know that the waist measurement based on the cup size is going to vary a little bit. And that is because we have gone from a wider top up here and we wanted to make a smooth enough transition on the side seam so it's not super curved in here, so it actually lays a little bit better on the body. So you may, if your waist measurements are just a little bit bigger than what is on the chart, you may not need to make that change, but you can always add a little bit extra here and baste it together on the side seam to figure out whether or not you want to take it in or not. So I'm going to set these aside. On this piece here, there is a notch to indicate where we stop pinning and sewing this. So in lieu of actually marking it and snipping the fabric, I would probably say let's just stick a pin in here or just do like a little pencil mark on that. So I'm going to take this and mark kind of on both sides. So when I pull it apart, got that piece there. Yeah. Of course I did not think that through. Okay, so we have that pin indicating where the notch is. So I'm going to line them up. So I have right side facing up. And then we can pin this piece along the curve. So as you can tell, this piece is nice and straight because we have all of the shaping in the princess seam on the side. So right where that pin is, I'm going to actually put that edge. And actually I probably moved it about 1/4 of an inch. This is a little, you can play around with this just a little bit. Because these fabrics are stretchy, you have a little bit of play. So I probably wouldn't put too many pins at the top first. Go ahead and kind of get the top started and then the bottom started. and then that way we can kind of meet up. Now you want to have kind of a slight little overlap right here from where they're going to be attaching at the 3/8 of an inch. And you can use clips or pins. I have never really gotten used to the clips. I didn't really like using them, so my daughter actually has all the clips. She just clips anything together, and I'm sure she uses them for sewing. And then I'm just going to kind of walk back up to this side. And so the garment itself is not that difficult to put together. You just got to find the right fabrics to do it. So this pink fabric is one that I do have in my online shop. And I have 4 different colors. No, I got 4 colors and then black and white. And the white is completely dyeable, so you can actually get it a little bit more custom. Okay, so if I take that, I like to pin as much as I can before I leave the table. So I guess I started mine about 1/4 of an inch down from the top. So that's, as long as you start at the exact same spot on both sides, then you can play a little bit. You have a little bit of a fudge, a little bit of room to fudge. So I usually will sew my seams on a knit with an overlock machine, but you can certainly sew them with the zigzag. Your seam allowance on these are 3/8 of an inch. So all of the joining seams are 3/8 of an inch. Your elastic, your necklines and your armhole is also 3/8 of an inch, but it's designed to sew an elastic directly to it and then flip it under. You can easily do the bands on it, but you just want to be a little careful that you don't end up making the bands too wide. And depending on the stretch of your fabric, you may need to alter the measurements that are currently in the charts. So for this fabric, because this fabric is a little bit on the stretchy side, I'm actually going to stretch my elastic as I'm actually sewing the neckline and the armhole elastics. I did a bunch of kits out of the micro spandex, the microfiber spandex, and it is amazing. But it also has a really, really good recovery, which can also cause some issues when you're actually sewing the elastic. So that fabric does not, when you stretch it, it comes back to where it started from. This fabric, I can tell you that as you sew it, it's going to stretch, including with the elastic. It's going to end up being a little bit bigger than where you started. So that's why you would actually stretch your elastic slightly for this. For the microfiber, that fabric comes back no matter what you do. So if you can handle it as much as you want, and if you stretch your elastic, your neckline and armhole is going to end up being smaller than what you really want, and you're going to end up having some gathers. And we discovered that when we were actually working with some of the testers on some of the kits. So you may notice on some of the photos that they're a little gathered around the shoulder. That was what kind of a lesson that we learned while working with that fabric, because it's a new fabric I just got, so it's not something I've had for a long time. And so that was kind of the first big project we did with them, was for these tanks. So that's what I sent to my testers. I also sent them some of this fabric, but they used them for the youth versions. So you probably have seen some samples on my social media that have some of the youth versions in this fabric. You use this fabric for outerwear or underwear, really. It might be a little bit thick to use on panties, but it really depends on what you're comfortable with. It may stretch a little bit more, so you might actually want to kind of size down a little bit if you're going to use this fabric on the panty. So I am just almost done pinning. So you can see I love to pin the entire garment before I go sit at the machine. So get my shoulder. So I have my overlap because I'm sewing it at that 3/8 of an inch. You also have to be careful if your fabric is really, really stretchy, This front neckline, because of the design of this, it can end up getting pulled off grain and actually really end up stretching a little bit more. So I would say before you sew your elastics on it, try this on. So you could even just baste all these seams together, try this on, and kind of double check that we don't need to shorten anything. If you end up having kind of your neckline's a little too long, you might want to consider taking your shoulder up a little bit. That way it's just tiny bit smaller. You could also even take in a dart if you kind of need to change the angle of everything. So this is now completely pinned and ready for me to sew. So I'm going to sew the seams at 3/8 of an inch. My overlock stitch is 1/4 of an inch wide. So what I'm going to do is when I'm actually sewing it at that 1/4 inch, I need to actually shave off. So I'm going to be cutting a little bit off the edge so when my finished seam allowance is right at that 3/8 of an inch. So I went ahead and sewed all of my seams together on my overlock. I didn't show this step because I actually don't have a camera set up over that machine, but I'm going to sew all my elastic on over at my zigzag. So normally what I usually love using is this really beautiful 1/4 inch lingerie elastic. It's really soft and it's really easy to work with, but this is actually all I have at home right now. So I'm actually going to use this elastic, which it's, as you can see, it's kind of curly a little bit, and I want to double check to see how it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew a sample on here. First thing I want to do is I actually want to take and kind of get my original measurement. So I'm actually going to line it up on here. This is 4 inches. So I'm going to cut that 4 inches, and then I'm going to sew it with the zigzag. I'm going to do 2 passes just as I would be doing it on the top to double check to make sure to see what I need to do to it. So I'm going to run a pass with it not being stretched, and then I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to measure to see what the elastic is. So I've got it on a pretty wide zigzag right now. Okay, I can definitely see that it caused my fabric to stretch a little bit. So this is definitely an elastic I'm going to have to pull a little bit. But let's see if it's just a slight bit or not. If it stretches out more on the second pass, it didn't seem to stretch out any more on that second pass, but it definitely stretched a little bit on the first pass, and so I don't want it to fan out that much. So now I'm going to be sewing this slightly stretched. Now I have the charts in the instructions. I usually don't like to use set instructions because it really depends. Like I said, you want to test your elastic on your fabric and see how well it sews, and then kind of take that feel for how you're doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to be putting this elastic on the armhole and the neckline, and I have it so the inside, actually we're going to do this, I'm going to do it right side out, but I'm actually going to sew the wrong side. So this actually just helped keep all the fabric up top so I don't mess with it. And we can start with the armhole. I want to start probably down close to underneath the arm. So usually not right at the arm because you have this other bulk going on right here. But I am going to just go ahead and kind of maybe about 1 inch before. And I'm going to stitch this right to the edge. So this elastic is 3/8 of an inch. And this is what that seam allowance is on the armhole and neckline. So I'm just going to get it started, a couple stitches, and then I'm going to just slightly tug it. Not too much. We don't want to do this because then it'll really kind of pull your neckline and your armhole in a little bit, but just enough so when you sew that second pass, it should come back to that original shape. And so I'm sewing it on the inside. So even though I have the right side facing out, I'm sewing it on the inside of it. That way it keeps it so everything's up top and we don't accidentally sew something we're not supposed to sew. I'm not pulling it much. I'm pulling it, ever so slightly. And when you get to the seams, like the shoulder seams, you probably want to try and make sure you keep them both to one side. And so you could do this with the overlock machine. Just overlock it to the edge, and that's usually what I do, but I figure I'd show you how to control it and how to check it. I'm going to be very proud. I changed my thread to pink. 99% of the time it's in black. So okay, and now when I get back over here to where I started, I'm going to overlap the elastic so it's like overlapped by about an inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of mark right about there. And that way I didn't have to really sew the two ends together, but I just went around. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the second row. I'm just going to take and I'm going to fold it in, and I'm going to do the second pass of stitches at this point. I don't think I need to show you all of the different different seams, so I'm just going to do this on the armhole. When you're going to do the neckline, you do have a much larger area. I would start it in the back, probably right around here near the armhole. I'm sorry, right around here near the shoulder. So now I'm going to fold this over. Now we can stitch it on the top or on the bottom. Because we want to make sure that what's on the top looks good, I'm actually going to take and stitch it on the top. And this way, when I'm sewing it, I can stretch it a little bit too if it looks like the fabric is kind of pulling a little bit. So just kind of folded it right at that elastic edge. So right here you can see it kind of pulls a little bit. I probably pulled it a little bit too much there. I'm just going to take a little bit at a time and smoothing it over. And then I stitch it over by about a ½ inch. Come on. Ugh. Lost my foot. I love these little attachments because it makes it easy to switch the feet, but they certainly pop off sometimes. So there is the armhole. I'm going to continue and I'm going to do that on the front, on the other armhole. Now on the hem, what we can do is you can take and you can fold it twice if you want. If you have an overlock machine, usually what I like to do is run the overlock around the bottom just to kind of get a nice, smooth, to make it look pretty. And I'm double checking all of my seams are actually ending at the same point. So that is a first because usually I do not line them up properly. So thank goodness for that. And then what we can do is you can just take and fold it back, and we can fold it back about 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to do a slightly larger stitch than what I did underneath the arm. But I also want to possibly tug my fabric a little bit as I'm sewing it. So when I do end up washing this and drying it, it will kind of go back to its shape. But that way it gives you enough stretch to go over the head. So I'm doing this on the back side. That way I can kind of double check, and I want to get it right on the edge of the fabric. So fabric's a little grippy, so it should be fine. And that's actually the machine is wanting to pull the fabric through. It's slightly different, kind of stretch it as it sews it a little bit. But this fabric right here in the front is super stretchy, a little bit more than I would normally like. So half the time on my tanks, I don't even do a hem. I just stitch the side and I do reinforcement at the side. But I'm doing a hem for this one, for you. Okay, so I've finished my hem. I'm going to finish the other two elastics off camera. That looks nice. I'll finish that and I'll meet you back over at the big table. So my Rachel is complete. And just as I had thought, is that the front neckline, of course, stretched a little bit more than I wanted. I will put a little bit of steam on this, see if I can lay it flat, but it should lay pretty flat on me because I'm fairly curved here, so it should actually lay fairly nice on me. But we have all the elastics finished. We have the hem done. Simple back. And that is our completed Rachel.